Sweet. Oh, I'll press that. Okay, awesome. Well, thank you guys so much for joining me and Happy New Year. Today, what I'm going to be showing you guys is how I color this line art sheet. And in the sign up for the class, it was available as a PDF there. And if you didn't print it already, it is also in the chat. So you can download that and print it on marker paper if you haven't already. But essentially, I'm going to be using the 12-piece sketch basic set. And over to this area of my screen, I have all the markers laid out. And then I have the line art sheet here printed full size. So the sheet that I made is about 8 by 10 inches. And then you print it on an 8.5 by 11 sheet of paper. And then over here, because I just want to show different sizing, what you can do. When I went to print it, I just printed it at 70%. So I made it a little bit smaller, might be a little less intimidating since there are some details in here. But this is just what one of the finished pieces looks like. And you can do a lot of things to the piece whenever you're done coloring it. I mounted it on a black sheet of construction paper and then on this like Art Deco looking gold kind of decorative paper. So you can do a lot of different things when you're done with this line art piece. But I really love this happy tiger and how cute it looks whenever we're done coloring it. But yeah, so then I have this here just for reference. Again, I printed this at 70% of the size, and then this is the original size. So just to give some options to see different results. I will move that. And then these are just different decorative papers that I'll be using at the end. Okay, so what we have is using with a 12-piece basic sketch set, we have a lot of those basic colors, right? So we have this beautiful yellow, this orange color, YR in Copic terms. We have red violet, we have an earth tone, we have some yellow green, we have some yellow. So we've got a lot of really great colors that we use in this set. And we'll basically use every single color. I'm not sure if we use black on this, but every single color we do end up using for this piece. And before I get started coloring it, I am just going to show a few tips and tricks on a blank sheet of marker paper. And I'll lift this up to show closer as well. So basically all I did was take my 12 colors and swatch them out at the top. I like to do this before I start coloring a new piece, just so I know what the colors look like on the specific type of paper. And so I'm using today is just a Nina premium cardstock. So they have different weights, or a paper might be more white or more cream colored. So I just like to do this beforehand. It gives me a really good perspective of what they look like when I get to the finished piece. And then right here, I have what the markers look like with 1 layer, 2, and 3, because as you add more layers, any given color is going to get darker. So that's what we're going to use, especially for on the orange for the tiger today. And then I'm going to show you guys right after this how to make a transition between 2 colors. And over here, I have 3 colors. Also, I did mention in the sign up as well, we're going to add a cool gray. You can add C2 or C3, and that's for the part of the tiger, like where his white fur is, just to add that shadow. And then I can also show you how to kind of blend that out with the Zero blender. And I know a lot of people who use alcohol-based markers, especially Copic, love to use their Zero blender, and it really can produce a really good fade between that color into like the white of the paper, especially with lighter colors like C3, 2, or 1. So yeah, I am basically going to show this blend right here first. So let's grab YG03. And this is Copic Sketch. I want to make sure this is focused on my screen. Okay, so this is Copic Sketch, and it's the one that's shaped like an oval. And this one comes in all 358 colors. And it's really handy too, because they have the names listed on the cap. Sorry, my screen's kind of blurry. But when I do swatches, I like to start with a darker color first. And I am partial to the super brush nib. So I will take that out. And I'm just going to start adding a little bit of ink to the paper. And I'm just going to color in a quick up and down motion. and add maybe like 1 inch of the pigment to the page. And then let's grab Y13, the yellow in the set. And I will go from inside this area, not overlap the entire thing, but about 1/3 of it. I'll start to overlap and then draw that color out. And then I'll overlap that area again, just in the middle. And I'll do it a few times. And then I'll let that pigment dry just a little bit. And now I'll go back again with YG03 and add it at the ends and kind of fade that in a little bit more. And one more time with the Y13 in the middle. And I have to work pretty quick because I want to add the color while the ink is still wet. But you can still see a little bit of a line there, and that's because the ink is still drying. But when it does dry, it does create a smooth transition. So yeah, that's just YG03 into Y13. And again, when it dries, it will make a smooth gradation. And let me just take a note right here. YG03 to Y13. And I'll lift this up one more time. So whenever you make a gradation and you're trying to blend two colors together, it's always easier as well to do it with colors in the same value. So notice how both of these color names end with a 3. That's going to make it easier to blend because 3 means they have the same light to mid-tone value. Whereas if I try to blend, let's say YG03 with the darker green, it's going to take a lot more layers of that light green to really blend it in. But yeah, I think it's always easier to start with similar values. And then I'll show this one here, which is an earth tone with a red, but they both have kind of red undertones to it. So I'll just do that right underneath it, actually. And again, I'll just go up and down about 1/2 inch of the color. And then I'll add the red super brush nib about right in this area, about a little bit towards the end of that space. I'll start to overlap it and then draw the color out. And I will go over that many times. It's also nice with Copic that you have refills. And typically because of how I color, I refill the lighter colors more often because of this. I always go dark to light, back to dark, many layers of the light in between. I'll go one more time. Okay. And I'll write a note. So that was E09, which is like a burnt sienna color, with R08. I think that one's called vermilion. Look at the cap. Yep, vermilion. Okay. I will lift this up to show that gradation. So again, where that tick mark is up here, that's where I first started to add the R color on top of the E color. But then you just add many layers in between, especially in this middle portion, to really make it smoother. And I'll show this other example here. I might have to go over the yellow a little bit more right there, but yeah, so those are some kind of gradations. And then I think we can see a little bit clearer up here what the difference is between adding more layers. Okay, so I'm going to show this example up here between 3 different colors next. Okay. And then we'll get into the coloring the piece. I just want to show this because it's easier to practice it first. And if you mess up, you didn't mess up on the line art. So I just want to prevent any kind of little mistakes. Okay, so I'll go again with the R08. Just add a little bit. And then I'll go with that YR04, the orange color in the set. We might have to add a few layers again. And this will come in handy for all of these banners because there's a red to orange to pink. So we're just practicing that beforehand. And lastly, that pink color, RV11, RV11, which is a very pale pink. So this is going to take a lot of different layers here. And I'll kind of draw it out. And the ink is still wet, but I will take note, YR04, RV11. Okay. So I just want to show this and working quickly to make sure that your gradations aren't too stark. So we want to make sure they actually blend well together. And we can see too, when you flip your page to the back side, where we're adding more layers of the pigment, right? So we're adding more layers in those intersections. The back of your paper can tell quite a story with how many layers you're adding to the front. But yeah, I always recommend before you get to coloring the real thing, just have a practice sheet and try it out. Because you never know, you might feel very confident, but then you might make a mistake. So it's always nice to have practice before you get to the line art. And so with that, if there's no questions, I'll move on to the actual line art piece. And so what I'll start with is the tiger itself, and then I'll kind of work my way around. So with the tiger, obviously, we use lots of oranges. And so what I'm going to start off with is our YR04, which is our chrome orange. And because this is a very organic shape, it's not, square or geometric, I will use the super brush side and start wherever you like. I think I'm going to work left to right and just kind of add in the pigment. And I like to work in a quick up and down motion. Some people like to work in like small circles, but whatever works best for you. I'm going to fill in these areas between the whiskers next, because they're kind of boxed in. And then, so over here on my finished piece, and I will pause to show, but to make it look more realistic and less flat, I decided to make like a little triangle here by that middle whisker. If you can see that little triangle there, to kind of make a stop between the orange of the face and to the white underneath his chin. So that's just personal preference, but you can make that change down here. The entire side of his face can be white as well, but that was just my decision. There's no, distinctive line that says, oh, this is where the orange stops. So just be aware of that, and I will make a little mark there now so that I know, and start to fill it in. And I am just working up and down using that super brush nib. Also by the eye, I will draw another line to kind of close off. As we can see over here, I kind of closed it off before the end of his face. So I will do that over here. Okay, and then, oh, need to close this off down here as well. So right kind of in the point where his tongue is where that line goes. And this is personal preference. Again, I want to show off like the grays and whites underneath his chin. Let's see. By his eyebrows, I'll fill all this in. And I am just adding one straight layer of orange. Like I know I'm going to end up using E09 on top, and I will blend it out. But I'm just getting a flat layer of this orange first. And I'm seeing in the chat, yes, this is all alcohol ink. Copic markers are alcohol markers. And this is the Sketch 12-piece basic set. So it's really easy because you can just buy them all together. You don't have to hunt for individual colors. But like I mentioned earlier, I did purchase either C2 or C3, whichever one you want. to kind of add dimension to the white areas of his chin, his or her chin. And when I made this template, I did make the lines a little bit thicker. Sometimes when I color things with very thin lines, I can easily go outside the lines. So hopefully this has been a pretty easy coloring process so far. And I do want to mention too, I didn't make a statement to say this, but because his face is very symmetrical, this is very much so like a design oriented piece, not hyper realistic, but because he is more linear, I was coloring in that motion. I wasn't coloring side to side. So make sure when you color things to look at the direction of the object you're coloring. And when I worked around his like nose and whiskers, I tried to color in more of a curve right here because his face also curves. And also with the eyebrow, I kind of colored in a curved motion as well. Certain spots that are smaller, it doesn't really matter the direction. But for a tiger, especially, he's the show, the main attraction of the entire piece, the focal point. We want to make sure that he is colored really well. Okay. Oh, I forgot that last ear. Let me add that in real quick. Okay. And so that's just one layer of orange. And if I actually flip these over, you can tell as we finish the piece, look at how much ink you can see on the back of the finished piece versus the one layer of orange. So obviously, the more you layer, the more vibrant the finished piece will look. So, okay. And next, I'm going to actually add the gray to where his white chin is. So I have C2 actually is what I'm going to use. That's what I used over here. And yeah, I will just kind of flick the marker up. So I'll start down here in the largest area right under his mouth and flick the color up a little bit past where the lines are of the actual drawing. So I'm going to flick a little past, and this is just one layer so far. Okay, and I'll lift this up to show. Now, granted, this is a very light gray. We're just adding it for an accent. But yeah, it's kind of difficult to see right here. But all I did was go a little bit past these smaller, thinner lines. I just flicked it a little bit past it. And so I will do the same thing over here. I will add the gray at the base and flick it just a little bit past those accent lines. Again, this is just to add a little bit of a shadow underneath the chin. Again, with that super brush nib, very, very helpful. It almost feels like you're painting, but with markers. It's very fun. So I will kind of work my way around this symmetrical design. And I chose C2 because I just wanted to add a cooler tone underneath his white, fur. You can use a warm gray if you want. There are many different types of tigers, and some of them have warmer tones to their fur, some have cooler tones, some can be neutral. Let's say you have neutral gray markers, you can use those as well. It doesn't have to be cool gray, but that's just what I chose from a personal, point of view. Okay, and then we also add a little bit of gray because the highlights around his eyes are going to stay white, so they really glow. So we're going to add gray there as well. So right on the inside of his eye, I will flick. I'm just adding it where those lines are, those accent lines, adding a few layers above and beneath his eye. And I'll do that to the other side as well. And then where we drew this designated line to kind of show where that highlight of the eye stops, I will also add a few flicks going inwards towards his eye. I'm not getting too carried away. I'm just adding a few flicks. There we go. And last but not least, I will add a little bit of gray in the shadow underneath his kind of nose where his whiskers are, onto the teeth, and then down here on those lower teeth as well. So I'll go add just a little bit of gray on those teeth. Again, flicking the marker just a little bit past where the lines are. And again at the bottom. Okay, and then I'm going to pause for a second to lift it up. Okay, so right now we have a little bit of gray around the eyes to add some shadow to that white area. And then on the teeth as well, just a little bit of grays. And the last thing we'll do, because he's going to have white whiskers, we're going to add a little bit of gray to the inside and to the edge, to the end of the whiskers. So we'll do that next. Just a few flicks. And then I'm going to turn my page a little bit so that my wrist is comfortable. It's much easier to color for me this way, working more up and down. Okay. I'm going to pause there for just a second. And then I'm only going to add just a little bit of more gray just to this area under his chin, because that's the biggest area of gray we have in the entire piece. So I'm going to add a second layer just along the very bottom portions. I'm not covering the entire thing again, just the very bottom. And I might do like a dot of gray as well on each of these little ends of his chin, like the fur on the chin areas. And you can layer as many or as few times as you want. Okay, I will lift this up. So here's where we're at so far. He's coming along. So I just added a little more gray to the bottom of each of these kind of fur points and down here where there's more gray to fill. And next, I want to add some pink. Right now he's looking kind of flat. I'm gonna wait for my screen. It gets kind of pixelated here for a second. Okay. So I'm going to take RV11, which is a very, very light pink. And, oh, it is just called pink. Very simple name. And I'm going to add this color to his nose. So just this nose area. The area, I'll pick this one up just so you can see it. So I'm coloring just the nose pink, and then the little area behind it, I color with R08. That's a personal choice. You can color the whole thing with pink if you want. And then I also color pink for the tongue. So I will just go up and down quickly. I want to make sure I don't get that marker streak look. And then I will fill in the tongue as well, up and down. There we go. He's already starting to add a little more vibrancy to him. Okay, and then I actually add pink. So in your eye, you have a little bit of pink where like the crease of your eyes are. So I'm going to add pink right on the inside, just a little bit, and the edge. Just a little bit of pink. I'm basically just adding one stroke, and then I'll add a few flicks on either edge. And I think that's it for the tiger with the pink. So again, just right in this inner eye area and the outer eye area. Okay. And I guess I'll add some E highlights because we need to add some areas to make him have more contrast. So E09, this is actually, it's a brown color, but it has red tints to it. So it works really well with this orange. And I'm going to color in this entire top area. And notice how I'm coloring now that this is more of a horizontal line. I'm trying to color in the shape of this part of his head. So I'm not going up and down. I'm following the curve of this shape of the head. So it's almost like I had to make a few waves. And then I basically created his eyebrows. So I made little eyebrows over here to try and create more fold and dimension. And so to do the eyebrows, I'm going to draw a line with the tip of my super brush nib right underneath all of these lines. So I'm going to kind of close it off and it'll kind of swoop down into that center nose crease. And I can lift this up as soon as I get these drawn in. And it's approximate, it doesn't have to be perfect, but we are creating dimension through coloring. Okay, so here we go. Lift that up. So basically I made kind of penciled in his eyebrow. And now I'm just going to flick the color to about the length of these shorter lines in the drawing. So I'll flick the color up, like I said, to about where those smaller lines are. I might go a little bit less than that, but about. So I'm flicking this E09, either eyebrow. There we go. So it's starting to look nice. And then I also use E09 to add more dimension to his ears. So I will also add E09 at the top and at the edge of his ears, not very much because it's a very small space. But as I move into the ear, much more E09. And don't worry, we will blend this out with our orange. So I know it looks drastic now, but it will get blended. And then the space, oh, I forgot to color that bridge of the nose. Whoops, I'll go back in. But right above the bridge of the nose, I will also add E09, flick it up just a little bit to about past the point of the white highlights going around his eyes. And then I'm just going to fill in the exterior of like the mouth where his lips are. So I'm going to try and also follow the shape of the mouth. So I'm working all the way around. And if you can pick your hand up, it doesn't have to be one continuous coloring.
Shannon, while you're working on this, Delilah has a question. Which grade did you say? Which number was that?
Oh, C2.
C2. Thank you very much.
C2. Yes. I said in the class sign up, C2 or C3. On this mini version, the small version I made, I actually used C3. I'm going to hold this up for a second. So yeah, it's a little bit darker, but either one works. Just depends on how much contrast you want. If you want a more bold statement, go with C3. It's easier to kind of blend into the paper if you use C2. So yeah, there we go. Okay, so I've gotten the first layer of E09 almost done. So there's two kind of layers of ears, the big one on the top, and there's this little section underneath. So I need to add very minimal E09, but just dab a little bit of color in there. Just adding a few little dots essentially. Okay. Double checking on either side. That looks about right. Okay, so now here's where the Copic magic comes in. We're going to use the YR04 and layer it a few more times. Yeah. I see a question in the chat that says, how do Copic compare to Spectrum Noir? I'm assuming that's the Illustrator markers with the brush. I'm not sure if Spectrum Noir has refills, but I feel like with Copic, that is the main thing that I love about them, is that you can refill them. There are many times throughout college where I was looking for a cheaper option, but I ended up spending more money anyways because I had to buy new markers constantly. So I think with Copic, the winner for me and why I keep using them is color consistency. No matter if you buy this marker 10 years from now, the color is going to be the same. And I can't necessarily say that for other brands all the time. That, and again, you have those refills. And saying like, this is an orange color, if I stain this with like black, I can also replace the nib if I have to, which I've hardly ever found in other brands. So there's just a lot of, it makes a lot of economical sense, I guess, in the long run. And the quality is always very consistent. So that's kind of my reasoning why I stick with Copic. And today we're using Sketch, since this is the marker that comes in 358 colors, all the colors. But if you're looking for a cheaper option, go with Copic Chow. It's sold at a cheaper price point, but it has the same two nibs. The only difference is it comes in less colors and it has less ink in the barrel, so you have to refill it more. But yeah, so basically I'm just going to blend out these areas with E09. And I'm adding more layers. So I'm working from inside E09 and I'm flicking the color out. And so it might take a few layers, like it might be 3 or 4. Okay, and then I need to blend out these eyebrows. So I'm flicking the color up. Okay, and already we're seeing quite a difference between one eyebrow and the other. And I'm gonna add more just where the E09 meets the orange. Okay, now this bridge of the nose section. So I'll flip the color up. And I really love this color. YR04 is such a pretty orange. Okay. So I'm going to pause I love seeing work in progress. So we can already tell a difference between adding more layers. Yeah, okay, there, my screen is still there. So over here on the left, obviously in the eyebrow in the center, we can see I've added maybe 2 or 3 more layers of YR04, which is really making the transitions super smooth. So we're just going to keep doing that throughout the rest of the tiger here. And I'll try and work a little faster so we get this done in an hour. I don't want to keep you guys waiting too long. So, and I'll let that kind of dry a little bit. Go back in. Something too, you don't want to oversaturate your paper, especially if you have a very thin marker paper. This I think is 110-pound paper, so it's definitely on the heavier side. If you're working on a lighter, like 65-pound marker paper, just wait a little bit between layers so that your paper can like soak in the alcohol. We're not working with something like acrylic paint where it sits on top of a surface and you can just keep adding as much as you want. We can only add so much to what the paper will allow. So that's why usually when I teach a class, I always recommend good paper because it does make a difference. You can only have, you can have the best markers, but if your paper is stinky, then there's only so much you can do. So I definitely recommend good paper. Okay, so I add one more layer to this eyebrow, and then I'll work over on the other side of the ear. And again, with this Sketch 12-piece set, the colors do kind of melt into each other, especially all the warm colors and all the cool colors. Okay, is there anything else? I think I'm just going to add another layer to kind of outline this eye. So all I did was just trace right around the outside of the eye, and I'll do that over here as well. Just kind of an extra layer, you know, just to add that punch. And I'm going to do the same thing under the eye, kind of giving him like eyeliner a little bit. And over here. And I think I'm going to outline like the cheek area too. Go. Okay. And maybe I'll bring one more outline just kind of around the outside. And these kind of details can, you know, whatever you want. It's more of like a personal preference after a while. I just want to show how I kind of add extra pizzazz with layering. Because you can do a whole lot with just 12 colors, especially with this set since it has primary and secondary colors already, as orange being a secondary color. Okay, I think the tiger is almost done. The only thing I have to do left is kind of finish up the nose and the eyes. And oh, still forgot to do this. The bridge of the nose.
Nellie's got a question. Does index paper or cardstock work as well? Or is there an actual specific paper called marker paper?
Yeah, so Strathmore and Canson sell a marker pad. It literally says marker paper or whatnot on the front. And then I'm using Nina cardstock. So this is a cardstock. This is not a marker paper, but it works very well. You can even find this, you know, different varieties of Nina at Michael's. And potentially even like office supply stores. I'm not sure, but yeah. So cardstocks, index paper, I'm not sure. I don't have personal experience with that, but this is a cardstock and it's lovely. And it prints really easy. It's always nice. Yeah, and then the eyes. That's right. So I'm going to use YG03, and we did this earlier. YG03 at the top. So I'm going to outline and kind of add that color about half, the top half of the eye. And I will repeat on the other side. So I like to choose green as well, green and yellow, because it really stands out against the orange. So I really like that. Then we've got this nice, bright and kind of pale lemon yellow Y13, and we will finish off the bottom portion. And this just melts into that YG03. So these should blend very easy together. Like I said, I showed this earlier. And we'll do this exact same blend in these kind of big shapes here. But, oh, one more thing I forgot to do. The bridge of the nose, R08. Follow the curve of the nose. And then, let me see. Oh, what other part do I use the gray besides the eye? Yes, so the grays I use on the whiskers, inside of the whisker, and the outside edge of the whisker, and all of these darker areas of the fur. So we use the gray as a darker point of the white fur under his chin. And a little bit to show shadow under the cheek part for where the teeth are. So those are all my gray areas. For the actual cheeks, I just kept them white. That was just my preference, but that's where I would use the grays. Nowhere else, just on the tiger. But yeah, so let me just finish adding a few more layers. So I'm going to add just a little more to this bridge of the nose. I'm going to go back in with RV11 and add another layer of that at the top of the nose and a little bit at the bottom. So we create like a little middle highlight. And then, oh, the tongue. So I will add another layer where the lines are and flick the color out. And then I'm going to pause, let it soak into the page. And then I might add a third just to create more depth. And let's see, I think I want to use, would markers work on metallic cardstock? That is a good question. I'm not actually sure, but if the metallic cardstock is slick, like if it feels like slippery, I'm not sure if it will work. Markers, especially Copic alcohol markers, work on a porous, like ink soaking type of paper, but it might work with just fluid ink. I'm not sure, but give it a go. Like test it out and see, and let us know. Tag us on social media if you do and it works, because I would be very interested to see if it does. Oh, the E09. I just want to create a little more contrast, not highlight. So right under the cheek.
Shannon, how do you think Copic markers would work on metallic cardstock?
Oh yeah, sorry, I just answered that.
Oh, okay, missed that.
Oh no, you're okay. I was just saying I'm not sure if it's typically slick surfaces just don't fly well with Copic markers, so but give it a try. Like, so for example, this finished version, this is like a metallic, and if I put Copic on top of this, it would just slide right off. Like I could smudge it off, and that's my concern with metallic cardstock. I don't know, but there's obviously metallic paint canvases out there, so maybe it works, maybe it doesn't. I'm not sure. Test it. That's why we have practice sheets. Okay, so I think the tiger is pretty much done. We've got a yellow-green to yellow transition in the eyeballs. We have E09 blended in with YR04, and then RV11 for the nose and the tongue. So, oh, also C2, cool gray number 2 for the darker areas of the fur, whereas chin, the eyes, and the whiskers. Also shadow on the teeth. Okay, so the main attraction of the piece is done. Now we can start to fill in kind of the surrounding area. So I guess what I'll start with first is just filling in this big blue space so people can kind of get caught up here if they need more time. But what I'm going to do is turn my page. So it's kind of, opposite direction. And I will kind of outline all of the shapes first. This is a personal preference, so I don't accidentally fill them in. I have a tendency of doing that, especially when I'm trying to talk and color. So I'm going to kind of outline things. And this is pretty quick. This should not take much time. And then we'll get to some foliage and the rest of the piece. And for me, just turning the page, because I want to color this in that horizontal fashion behind the tiger. I just like the way that looks. So that's why I turn my page. It's just more comfortable for my wrist. And I'm just using the super brush nib. Since we have a lot of organic shapes around it, usually when I fill in a large space, I will just use the medium broad, the other side. But since we have to kind of finagle around other objects, I will just use the super brush nib. Okay. And in areas where the spaces might be a little smaller, you can hold your marker in a different way so that you get kind of the narrower tip of the super brush nib. I know that when I want to color a bigger space, I'll usually hold it kind of flatter so that I get more of that moppy look, or the fatter side so I can color in quicker. But some of these spaces in these kind of organic looking clouds, you need to pay a little more attention because they're narrower. And it does seem kind of like an obvious choice to use blue as the background for the sky, but you can even use a different color if you want from this set. I just like the blue as well because it fits as a complementary color to orange. They are directly across each other from a color wheel. So whenever you see them together, they really stand out a lot. It's kind of like violet with yellow, especially with flowers. They're so striking because they're complementary colors. Okay, so if I turn this around, all you see now is just an outline, but now I'm just going to fill it all in. So I'll turn it around again, and I'll just go and basically kind of weave my way through with lines. And there's going to be a little overlap with those outlined areas, but I like that look, how it kind of has an extra layer there. So this is more of a personal preference for coloring, but I like it. And I'll work as fast as I can to make sure I don't get too many streaks. And then I'll go over these kind of strings that hang down from the lanterns. Okay, I'm getting down to the flowers. That's one portion, then I'll go up over here. Up and down pretty quick. And then right above the tiger's head. There we go. And I'll scoot my paper a little bit closer to me to finish up this area on the other side. And if I did say that we're done using gray, I did misspeak. I apologize. We will use the cool gray 2 or 3 to color in the clouds. Not color them in completely, but add a little bit of contrast just along the edges. I forgot to mention that earlier, and I'm sorry. But yeah, they just, again, they're not dark gray colors. If you want to color the whole cloud gray, you can. But there's something nice about leaving some of the white of the paper. Okay, let's see. One last area. So in this piece, this one line art drawing, we get to practice a lot of different things with Copic. We get to do a lot of detailing and rendering in the tiger face, and we get to color in a large area with one flat color. So there we go, adding in that background. Things are starting to really pop. And let's go ahead and use that cool gray one more time. Cool gray 2. And not that you can see a ton of it from here. Let me lift it up. You can see a little bit of gray just on like either side of these small clouds. So it's not like we're going to use a lot of it. It's not going to be super drastic, but just a little bit. Okay. And again, because the clouds are going in this direction, I feel more comfortable turning my page. Oh, the blue that I just used is B14, B14. And so I'm just going to flick kind of just a little bit on this, because this is the left side that I'm working on right now. I'm flicking it a little bit towards me, but not coloring the entire thing. So I'm working pretty quickly, and again, not adding very much. And then I'll go to the very opposite side and I'll flick out, flicking away from me. I'm just going like 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, and so on. And now I've got these two kind of clouds in the middle. So we'll do both. So I'll flick away for these ones, this side. And then I'll flick towards me on the other side. And repeat over here. Brilliant, okay. And I'll turn it. Now my screen's getting kind of blurry. But there we have a little bit of gray accents there. And we'll actually go ahead and finish up this area at the top. I know we're getting close to that hour mark, so I'm going to try and finish as much as I can. I am going to add Y13 to this kind of setting sun behind it. And so again, I'll turn my page and just add in some lines. Got to outline that cloud. I don't want a yellow cloud. Fill that in real quick. And I got 2 more lines there. So it's not a very big shape, but it does add extra punch against that blue. So we've got some warm colors between the tiger and the sun, and then that cool blue color. So it's looking like a more dynamic coloring sheet. And as I'm talking, the ink is settling. So I'm going to add some flicks going towards the middle. So I'm adding another layer of Y13. So I just pushed against me, pushing away from me, and now I'm going to push the ink towards me, flick towards me. For the eye, what color did I use? Yes, that was YG03 and Y13. So for the eye, I blended 2 colors together. And that was of similar value. All right. Okay. So now I am going to show the transition between those 3 colors. This was way earlier in the class. I showed the red to the orange to the pink, and that's what we're going to do on these banners at the top. So bear with me. This is probably the last really difficult part, even though it's not, I don't think it's too difficult, but let's do it. R08. I will color either side of the edge of the banners. And I'm coloring in the curve, the shape of the banner. And I'm going to outline that. If you go a little outside the lines, it's no big deal. But if you do overlap a lot of red with the blue, you will start to get a dark purple. So just beware. Okay. And on my example, I flick the red about to where the H is and where the R is. So just for reference, because we're going to blend it with orange. So I'm going to flick to about halfway through the H to the end of the H, and then about to the end of the R, or about halfway through. This is kind of a guess and check. So yeah. And then since I already have red, I'm going to do the 2022 part. And I'm just going to color the very edge of the ribbon with the red. So I'll start there again. Filling it in pretty quick, making sure I outline it so I don't go outside my lines too much. Okay. And since this is a smaller banner, I'm just basically going to add just little flicks, very minuscule, just so that the red is present on that part of the banner. so that we can have still three colors on the banner, not just two. Okay. And now I will switch to YR04. There's a lot of orange in this piece. And I will go from inside this area. I'm working from the H right now, the H side. And flick the color, let's see, because I need to have all of new and a little bit of Y on happy. So let's flick to about the Y. Maybe color half of it with the orange. And this is approximate. And then I will flick again more at the area with the red. So I'm coloring the first half of the word happy with a lot of orange. And in a similar way, I'm going to color a little past the word year. So I'm layering on top of that red and I'm flicking the color down. Many, many layers. So I might have just did like 4 or 5 layers there. Okay, so layer it as much as you want to get more of that smooth transition. Oh, I need to do the 2022 part again, sorry. And so I'm gonna just color a little bit past the 2. I'm working at the bottom again first. So a little bit past the 2. And then again, since it's 2022, there's lots of 2s in this year. But on the other side, on the right side, I'm going to flick as well. Lots of layers. We definitely have more refills of the lighter colors because of how my layering techniques. And last but not least, RV11. And so this is a very pale color. If you have like this RV12, you know, or other things like that too that are a little darker, you can use that too. But lots of layers from inside the area with orange. YR04, because I need to make sure this has a smooth blend. Okay. And I like to capture like the kind of the E in new. I try and keep that as like the only layer of the pink because it really stands out because it's so pale. So I'll try and mimic that on the 2022 portion. There's one layer and then I'll flick. Again, many layers. It's not just one and done. Okay. So I'll turn this, and this is approximately where we should be. I am about hitting that hour mark. So if there's any questions you have, please put them in the chat so I can answer them. But I'm going to just finish up these banners and then maybe show a little bit of leaves. I'm going to use E09 to create more contrast with the red. So I did that over here on my finished piece earlier, and I will do that again. So kind of in the triangular portions of the banners, I will add the color, flick it in. And I'm just trying to create depth here. And where the banner folds, I will also add E09. And only a little bit to the Happy New Year banner. On the actual word portion, I'm not sure if I have room over here, but I will at least put it again underneath where the ribbon kind of folds. And I'll just mimic that on the other side as well. Is a one layer technique the way you can burnish certain areas? So burnishing, basically just like trying to make it smooth and softer. Yeah, if you just keep adding more and more layers of one color, that will give you that kind of effect. That is true. Just make sure your paper can handle it because you don't want to have just a pile of ink sitting on the surface. But yeah, I think that would work to get that really blended out effect. Okay. Back with R08. Again, just trying to soften these blends. This is also why we have a practice sheet. A lot of the cardstock and paper that I use is for practice. Okay. So adding more layers here. We can already see a difference, even though my paper is turned. We can already tell a difference which areas have more layers and which ones don't. Okay, one last portion. Okay. And I do want to just ask the class, if I put a file of this finished piece colored, would you guys find that useful if I put it in the chat? I think I can do that really quickly before the class ends if you need it for reference. And again, all the colors I'm using are in a 12-piece set besides the cool gray. So everything that you see here is from the 12-piece sketch basic set. And let me just
yeah, Shannon, definitely please put that in the chat.
Yes.
Thank you.
Let me see if I can upload that really quickly. Yes, so this was a scan. So all I did was scan this at my home printer. It's an HP printing, fancy. But again, when you try to look at it and refer to what you're coloring, just know that all the colors are in that 12-piece set. So that should really help. It's uploading now. So it should appear in just a few seconds. Okay, it says that it was sent to the chat so everybody can see it. I see some nods, so that's happy. That makes me happy. But yeah, so because again, I can easily talk a lot, and there's a lot we need to focus on this big piece of art. So, but yeah, the most difficult parts we did touch up on. The tiger is obviously colored, and what I showed since we hit that hour mark, what I did different is that I changed a few color orders. So this color, I chose a purple flower to make the pink stand out more versus over here, I had like an orange behind the pink and it didn't stand out as much on the banner. So that's just a color placement suggestion from my point of view to yours. On this flower, this kind of tropical one, I created more layers. I basically used these 3 colors up here in the middle of the flower to make it stand out more versus just red and like the brown color. So that's why I suggest, printing this a few times so we can kind of see a little bit of a difference between that purple flower under the chin versus like the orange one. And then I'll kind of overlap this, but there's a slight flower color change between this one and this version. But yeah. And again, whenever you're done, you can print it 100% true to size. It should be about 8 by 10 inches, the actual art. And this one is 70% to size. So play with that at home on your printer, especially if you don't want to color such a big area. It's okay to color smaller. I definitely feel like smaller is less intimidating, especially if you're newer to Copic. So yeah, there's plenty of different ways you can kind of make changes. And yeah, is there anything else? Because I know we hit the hour mark. Let's see. When coloring over words, black bleeds to color. How do I prevent this? So did the text up here bleed? I think that's maybe what she's getting at. Definitely make sure when you print it that the ink is dry all the way. Otherwise, okay, Amanda said yes, perfect. Otherwise it might bleed depending on the printer ink quality, I'm assuming. I have not had that issue yet with the printer I have. And again, it could be the quality of paper. I'm not sure. Just make sure the printer is, the ink is dry. If it does have a bleeding issue, I don't know, you have to color around the words, or you could always like stamp words on later, add them in yourself later. I don't know, I'm sorry. It might just be a printer issue though, because it should work. Like I haven't had any bleeding, so it might just depend on the printer. But yeah, if there's no more questions, I'm open to answer any of the questions in the chat. I'm sorry I didn't get to the foliage down here. Okay, I have a problem if it's an inkjet, not laser. Okay, so yeah, we're seeing other suggestions here. So again, could be a printer thing. Yeah, but if anyone's needing help, if they want to finish this, the same two colors in the eye I use to color here. So YG03 and Y13. And then these kind of leaf shapes here are just 2 layers of G17. And then I blended YG03 with G17 on these 2 outer ones. It's slightly lighter than the inside with 2 layers of G17. So I'm just trying to make some differentiation between the greens. And then you can add purple and that ultramarine blue in the background to make it stand out between this kind of lower portion and the upper portion. Yes, do you have your background paper to put behind the picture? Yes, I have options. So you can find so many different decorative papers, but I try to find papers that either kind of went along with the art piece or just black even. I'm always a fan of black. I'm wearing black today. So that works too. But yeah, so this is just like simple stripes. And this is a smaller paper. This was more so tailored towards when you print it out smaller. But yeah, you can just kind of mount it behind it. You can mount this onto black and then a fancy paper. I also, let me show you this. Okay, so this is what I was coloring on today, and I'll try and lift it to see. I made these pencil marks. So basically I just marked like 1/8 of an inch from the border, so I can have kind of like a white highlight. And that's what I did here to have some more crispness, to contrast it between a decorative paper in the background. So that's also an option. Oh, the PDF for the actual line art, empty, like blank, not colored in, is at the very beginning of the chat. Scroll all the way to the top and it's there. And then the colored version, I just put in at 5:03. So that's Central Time, like 7 minutes ago. So it's in the chat, the colored version. Yeah, so I think that's about it. Thank you guys so much for joining us on a Friday evening, and yeah, please share your creations. Ooh, excuse me. Make it with Michael's, Copic with us hashtag, excuse me, and then hashtag Copic. Michael Stores, Copic Official US on Instagram, Facebook, you name it, we're there. And then this last one is just me for my own personal page if you want to look at any of my art. But yeah, thank you guys so much for joining and for learning some new blending techniques for coloring this very happy New Year tiger. And I hope everyone is warm and safe throughout the winter. And we'll be sure to see you guys soon again at some other point. Until then, thank you guys so much.